wrote, "I wish nothing but peace to the world." And he came over and he was looking at it for about 20 seconds before he said a word. And I go, "Is everything okay, Mr. Moon?" And he goes, "Do you think this is a suitable thing to write in this book?" And I'm now hitting my pants, right? Because I'm just like, oh God, I've crossed the line.
Today I'm joined by travel YouTuber Mike O'Kennedy. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're one of the select few Westerners to visit North Korea in the 2 weeks that the country opened its borders earlier this year. I suppose I'll get right to the heart of it. Do you think you got a proper understanding of the real North Korea, or was it too restricted and curated, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, you're never in a million years in a 4 to 5 day trip in any country in the world, no matter where it is, no matter how restricted your trip is, you're never going to get a full understanding of a country in 4 to 5 days. It's just not going to happen. Even more so when you do have a pre-planned trip. Um, as you said, it was, this whole thing was planned, and to an extent, all of the activities were planned. That they were putting their best foot forward. They were essentially showing us, what we were allowed to see. So no, I don't think I got a fully understanding of the country.
In your video, one of the two, you mentioned that you got a glimpse of what it was like outside of the tour, and that you said it was, I think it was interesting. Uh, what do
I'm not
you,
away with
what did
words,
you,
unfortunately.
yeah, what did you see, and why was it interesting?
What you mean outside of the activities?
Yeah, you mentioned that you sort of caught glimpses of part of the real North Korea, as I suppose you could put it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what those were for those that obviously haven't seen it.
I mean, when we say real North Korea, it's a super I guess it's kind of a subjective term. What I mean is the tour that we were on. It's quite physically impossible for us to only see the activities that they've planned, because we're driving to and from locations, and we're in the city. We are in the city, and there are citizens and residents of the city. So I got to see families. I got to see people at work. I got to see some, a woman working at a market stall. And for me, that's the people of the country. I'm all about the people, and I've always have been. It's about the humanity side of things. So when I say, I got a glimpse into life there, that's exactly what I got. I got a small glimpse into daily life there. There's this I think there's this really strange misconception that a tour to North Korea is like the Truman Show. People think that everyone is, an actor, and everyone is like, it's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life, that people think that they would go to that extent to do that. The way my friend put it is, us, as just the first 8 nerds to have gone into North Korea, we're not important enough for them to like hide everything, or like to like make everything staged. Or so when I say a glimpse into real life, I just mean the streets. Do you know what I mean? The kid hanging out with his daughter in on the street, or there was some kids like sliding down an ice, kind of like an ice path. That's difficult to explain, but I saw daily life to an extent. I saw the people.
What did any of it feel like it was rehearsed? From watching the videos, it certainly seemed like some of it was staged, maybe, or
Yeah.
certainly some of the some of the lines people were saying were maybe it was
Yes.
the brainwashing, or whatever you'd call it.
No, I think you're right. I think there were parts of it that were staged. I think we've got, you know, we went to a visit at school one day, and there was I put it briefly in one of the videos. There were children in a classroom, and the lesson that they were showing us was about the environment, and I could tell that every single part of this lesson was pre-planned. Um, Do I think that all the kids were there that day just for us? No, I just think that they were just trying to do the best that they could. Um, and in regards of what other things were staged, there was a moment, really interesting moment, where I'm talking to these four schoolgirls, and I used to be an English teacher, so I would. One of a great talking point when you're speaking to kids that are learning English is talking about the countryside versus the city. What's the differences between the two? And this one girl, I said, "What?" I said, "Tell me about the countryside." And she took a pause, and she thought, and she said, "Thank you to our fatherly marshal. Thanks to our fatherly marshal, Kim Jong Un, the countryside has been changing, and but this is being built, and this is being built." So yes, that was rehearsed, and that was staged, you could call it. Um, I think that visits to the beer factory that we went to, they probably just opened it up for us when we were there. But to think that they could stage things like people out on the streets is just absurd. There's the resources that would go into that, or whatever. Like, there's just no way you can do it. There's no way that you could hide and stage everything. But yes, a lot of the tour, as in like the activities and the events that we were going to, were, maybe some of them were rehearsed, especially the school.
Do you think any of the people there are aware of the sort of the propaganda, at least you could say, that they're living under, or are they just kind of accept it?
It's, you see, in my opinion, I think it's difficult really to think, are the people there, you know, speaking highly of Kim Jong Un because they feel like they're being forced to, or is the indoctrination powerful enough and strong enough that they believe it? The answer to that question is, I don't know. Personally, I think there's probably a bit of both. I think that when you live in a world where there is quite literally no opposing view, um, the ability to think freely disappears, and it's ingrained to you from such a young age. Um, so I'd say, to an extent, I think that they are indoctrinated. I mean, you saw those. There's kids. There are, you've got 5, 6-year-old kids that are talking. That all the songs they're singing are about how great their leader is. It's not. I mean, you could compare it in a way to the Catholic Church. If you say to a kid from a very very young age, this is God and this is how great God is, and every single day we're going to go and sing about. They'll grow up to be possibly a worshipper or a believer. But however, um, I do also think that they are aware that if they don't think like this, or at least publicly think like this, then the consequences are heavy. So I think, honestly, it's a mix of both.
Mm. You mentioned that your perception of a country is more about the people than maybe the place, you could say.
Mm,
And you were able to interact with very few people, from what I could tell, aside from
mm,
maybe your tour guides, which would have been very, very precise, I think, in the
mm.
words they were using. You did meet a couple of people a little bit more randomly. What sense did you get of those as people?
They were just normal people, dude, to be honest. I think, okay, sorry. All the people I met in public. So, for example, we went to see some kids play. The kids do some taekwondo, and I think some of the mothers of the children were there. And as I walked past them, Annyeong Shimika, like hello in Korean, and they would kind of giggle and wave, and they were just very normal, man. They're very normal people that I wouldn't think they were any different to where I live in Vietnam right now. Same in the UK. They're just normal people. There was one gentleman I met in a bar, who who I gather was it would have been an elite North Korean member of the party. He had the badge with the two the leaders on it, Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Il, and he was he was an elitist, and he um, he was from Pyongyang, and I spoke to him, and that was one of the only kind of real conversations I really had when I was there, to be honest with you. But it was mostly because he'd been on the beers all night, so everything I could tell everything he said was semi genuine.
When you were visiting some of these other places, though, did you get the sense that they were functional outside of your visit?
Um, no, to be honest with you, I think that they had been functional. I truly believe that maybe pre-COVID, these places had been functional, and we know that because North Korea have exported for a beer factory, for example. They've exported beer in the past to China. That's a fact. So at one point it was, and they have beer. You can drink beer in Razon. I was in Razon. You can drink beer everywhere. So the beer's coming from somewhere. That day I didn't see a single worker. The same with the mineral water factory. I believe that they're probably in operation. I would say in a very limited sense, as and when they can or as and when they need. At the moment, I'd imagine that North Korea are they haven't got an abundance of resources to get things done. So I would imagine that they probably opened it up for us to go and have a look at. Yeah.
And you said that you saw a lot of well, maybe not evidence of farming, but things that were supposed to be looking like farming. But in a lot of the footage, there was empty fields.
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we have to remember this would have been mid-February, so and it was like minus 10 degrees, minus 5 to 10 degrees during the daytime. So generally, you're not going to see a lot of crops there anyway. However, from my prior knowledge to going to North Korea, I know that it's not the most fertile soil. South Korea has a lot. The soil is a lot more fertile than North Korea. Yeah, it was strange. It was barren. It was definitely barren. Again, to give them the benefit of the doubt, it was like just after winter, so it's always difficult to grow stuff around then. It'd be interesting to go back in at the end of summer and see what it looks like then.
Would you go back if you could?
I wouldn't mind going to Pyongyang. It's the capital, and apparently it's changed so much in the past 5 years. The skyline apparently looks completely different. There's been some major advancements in the development. Apparently, I don't know. So yeah, I would go back. I think I would go back to North Korea. I don't know if I should, but I probably would.
I was going to say, did you hear of? I might butcher this person's last name, and I'm sorry if I do. Otto
okay.
Warbeer?
Yes, Otto Warbeer. Yes.
Yeah. Did you? Did that weigh on you at all while you were there?
Yes. I'll tell you. I can go into a bit more detail on that if you like, because I spoke to someone that was basically not there, but was as close as you can be. That situation weighed on me constantly. If it hadn't been for the Otto Warbeer, again, I'm going to go into a bit more detail for your audience if you don't mind. He was on a tour over New Year's Eve. It was his last night, and he'd been drinking, which I was also drinking there as well. So he'd been drinking one night, and they say the rumor mill is he got dared by one of his fraternity back in the US or something to take down a poster from a staff section. Bullshit media will tell you that it was like a secret floor. It wasn't. It was just a floor that didn't have any guests on it. It was a staff floor. He went on there drunk one night about 2 a.m. and took down a poster that said something along the line. Well, it said something, some pro-party poster, whatever, propaganda we could say. Tried taking it down, wouldn't fit in his bag, left it on the floor. Next day, wakes up, doesn't tell anyone about it. Gets to the airport. As soon as he's boarding the plane, he gets picked up by North Korean bloody agents, and they take him away, and long story short, he gets sentenced to 15 years hard labor, and then winds up 15 months later on the border in a coma. So there's a lot more we could go into about it, but in terms of, this is such a small thing that he did in Western standards, that you kind of think, well, where is that line? Where is that line? Is me like you know, being somewhat critical towards Kim Jong Un in any way enough for me to get taken away, or you know, if they think I might be a journalist, because journalists are banned, right? Now, where do you draw the line between journalist and YouTuber these days? That there isn't one. I just don't work for a you know a media conglomerate that has an agenda. At the end of the day, I'm an independent journalist. And I think, you know, I was like, if they find that out, or if they look at this footage, or if I film what I shouldn't be allowed to film, are they going to put me in a political prison camp for 15 years? So yes, I was very aware. It weighed on me a lot, and it made me very paranoid. But I must say, our guides did a pretty good job at making us feel comfortable, I would say.
Did they check any of your footage or anything like that while you were there?
They actually didn't, mate. No, in terms of when it comes to footage, they didn't check anything, which I was super surprised about. They just would tell us when we weren't allowed to film. So there was a moment, for example, where I wanted to talk. We were in a pharmacy, and I couldn't see any contraception, right? Which you would see in basically every pharmacy in the world. You see some form of contraception. I couldn't see any, and I wanted to ask him about it. So my friend I said, I'll film and you ask, right, to this guy. And he goes, Mr. Moon, there seems to be a lack of contraception here. And, you know, Mr. Moon, hand in front of the camera, don't film this. So that was pretty weird. And then, you know, obviously you can't film military stuff. You can't film... There wasn't a lot we weren't allowed. Big public areas. So we went to a market. We went to a trade market. We weren't allowed to film in there, which I would imagine because it kind of goes against the fundamental. You know, a trade market with Chinese people buying stuff in it, which there were, goes against, you know, the complete idea of kind of self-reliance. You know what I mean?
When you were in North Korea, you visited something called the Russian Friendship House.
Yes.
And just to go back to a second to the sort of feeling of being somewhat watched, or not being able to say something you shouldn't have and being locked up or something. You wrote something in that book which they took great offence to. They
did take great offence. We go into this friendship house, which was built to commemorate the bond between Russia and North Korea. Pictures of Putin everywhere with Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un, and we weren't allowed to film inside of it until we got into this other room, which we were allowed to take some pictures in. We do a group photo, and Mr. Moon, our guy, says, "Would anyone like to write in the book?" And he kind of just immediately went to me. I think it was because I'd been piping up the entire time. He's like, "Come and write in the book, you know, pay your dues." And I came in and I just didn't know what to write, dude. I didn't know whether to write something I didn't want to write something pro. I didn't want to go, thanks Kim Jong-un for, you know, I didn't want to do that. But I obviously I couldn't write anything negative. Or any critical. So I just go, let's do a nice neutral wish for peace. I wrote, I wish nothing but peace to the world. That's what I wrote. And like I'm a 7-year-old kid on Christmas Day, like, you know, I wish peace for the world. You know what I mean? It's just so lame, but it's true. And I thought, you know, there's 8 different nationalities in one room in North Korea for the first time in 5 years at least. It seemed like a fitting thing. And I wrote, I wish nothing but peace to the world. And he came over and he was looking at it for about 20 seconds before he said a word. And I go, is everything okay, Mr. Moon? And he goes, do you think this is a suitable thing to write in this book? And I'm now shitting my pants, right? Because I'm just like, oh God, I've crossed the line. I've written about peace, and looking back on it, they either didn't quite understand it because it's like a double negative. I wish nothing but peace, or they possibly saw it as some kind of like veiled critique of like the fact that there isn't peace, and maybe it's because of them, or I don't know, dude. It was bizarre, but yeah, I was pretty paranoid about that for the rest of the day.
Did it come up at all after that?
The only time it came up was right on the very last night. Right, I'm drinking a beer with my guides. So at the end of the day, we gave him a couple of gifts. I gave him I gave him like some souvenirs that I bought from Vietnam to give to them. And I sat down with one of them. His name's Mr. Yu, and this is a guy that had barely said a word the entire trip. But he was a nice guy. He was a funny dude. Whenever he did say something, it was funny, but he couldn't speak very good English. And I said to him, cheers, Mr. Yu. And he cheerses me and he goes, I wish nothing but peace to the world. Exactly like how I said it in the book. And I'm like, oh God, like, do you know what I mean? The fact that he brought it up again was like they definitely talked about it or something. And his English wasn't good, so it was funny how he exactly, you know, recited this phrase that I wrote in the book. But yeah, it wasn't brought up in any kind of like formal way. Do you know what I mean?
What would be your biggest takeaway then for somebody else considering going to North Korea if they were to ever open up their borders again to the West?
You know what? I would say the way you got to remember is like, I went in as a content creator, so I kind of went in with this idea of like, I need to go in. I wanted to capture something engaging, and I was pushing a couple of boundaries when I probably shouldn't have done. If you go in with someone with a genuine interest in North Korea, and you're not a content creator, you take a couple of pictures, whatever. You're not a content creator. You're gonna have a good time. You are gonna have an interesting, a good time, and you won't be paranoid. Follow the rules, right? If you're gonna, like with every country you should ever go to, if you're gonna go to North Korea, respect their rules. If you don't want to respect their rules, don't go. Do you know what I mean? It's their turf, it's their toilet, it's their soil, and it's their rules. So as long as you respect the rules, you're going to have a very interesting, good and positive experience, I believe.
So what was your most positive experience then while you were there?
Honestly, dude, I think, right, I know I said the bit about the girls when I was speaking to those girls, and there was that one moment where, sorry, one sec. Just there's construction going on next door and it's really loud. Those girls I spoke to, one of them obviously had that kind of quite rehearsed phrase that she said about Kim Jong-un. Every other part of that conversation with those girls, if you watch the video back, they're genuinely interested. This is probably the first time, because 5 years ago they would have been about 6 years old or whatever, maybe younger. This is probably the first time they've ever been in a room with a foreigner, let alone spoken to. So they were genuinely interested, and you can see it in their eyes. Like they're really. And I was a teacher in Vietnam for 4 years, and I love hanging out with kids because they're genuine and they're real. And it was so nice to actually have a conversation. Yes, their questions were rehearsed, but they're studying English, of course. When adults study English, they rehearse their question. It was a genuine moment of like, this is a really cool connection that we're having. You're truly interested in my country, and I'm truly interested in yours. So yeah, any interaction you have with a kid when you're traveling is always genuine because they can't lie. Do you know what I mean? They can't be like false. Do you know what I mean? I think what people need to remember as well in that video, this is Razon, right? So it's a very northeastern tip of North Korea, and it's the only part that was open. It's very, very important not to look at that and think that that's how the country is. I know some friends of mine just ran the Pyongyang marathon. They got in as like athletes instead of tourists. So they've got a good view of if you type in Pyongyang marathon, my friend Harry Jagged's made a good video if you want to see what Pyongyang looks like. You just got to remember that this isn't what the country's like as a whole. Yeah, I think if you're going to go to somewhere like North Korea, you just need to like kind of just take it as it comes. I don't know, dude. They've got this horrible human rights. They've got this horrible human rights record, okay? And people say to me like, oh, well, if you go to North Korea, then you're directly funding the regime, and you're directly funding all these horrible things that they've been doing. I think if we don't go to North Korea and it remains closed, then that gap is never going to get bridged. And I think personally that the more people go there, I know it's on a tour, and I know it's like funding the regime, whatever. The more people go there, the more opportunities that people are going to interact with North Korean people, and in turn humanize the country and humanize the people, and that's what I'm all about. Don't care about. I'm not thinking about the government when I go there. I'm not thinking about this history. I'm thinking about the people. That's it, dude.
So do you think then that people have the wrong understanding of North Korea? Or at least would you separate North Korea from the people that live in it?
Yeah, I mean, I say at the end of the video, like, the people are not their government in any country in the world. Do you know what I mean? I've been to Iraq, which obviously has negative connotations. China, up until I started making videos about it, had negative connotation, like negative views about it. The people are not their government. I can't comment on, like, do I think people have the wrong view on North Korea, because, you know, we know for a fact that horrible has been happening there for years. We know that for a fact. But if we don't travel to these places, then it's never going to get better. I personally think so. And it's never going to humanize these people in this country. So yeah, peace.